At this point on the channel, we have covered nearly 20 different Hellraiser stories, and I think there's only one reason why I've been totally burnt out on the idea of these Cenobites being summoned, to do the bidding of the ever-spiraling Black Diamond God Leviathan, and seeing all these souls be countlessly sucked down into hell. And the reason that I think that is because Hellraiser has a very creative aspect to it, a very mysterious pull, with all these different configurations popping up from a toy company trying to sell knockoff Lamarckian cubes, or an old ancient unfound book of nursery rhymes. There just really is no shortage of ways of actually summoning these Cenobites and all the different kinds of stories that you can actually tell. Whether they're a little more heartfelt about human emotion, or whether they're just simply about pleasure and pain all in the same sitting. And with all these different configurations and every single new one that I find when I come across these comic books, I get more and more excited to see just what exactly is going to happen next. Whether it's going to be a new origin story, or the creation of a puzzle, or the opening of one. And today I have a story in my hands that I think is probably one of the more creative ones. A story about a man named Jason who would grow up blind and become a prodigy of a piano player who would eventually come to solve one of the most complex puzzles that I've really ever seen in this franchise. As this man will basically spend most of his life just trying to find the hidden notes of music in between, all these notes of misery and pain and the things that people don't really think about. And it's a story that truly screams Hellraiser all the way through. And the reason I say that is because it is a very uncomfortable story about this man trying to harbor all these different emotions, trying to mix a cocktail of betrayal, plotting, and physical pain, as well as a few lovers along the way, and it's a story that I find a little bit uncomfortable at times. And I think the reason why this one hits the nail on the head so hard is because it's actually written by Peter Atkins, the man who wrote Hellraiser Hellbound, as well as Hellraiser Bloodlines, a very strange movie that I have yet to watch myself, and you might think that a person who covers so much Hellraiser would have seen every single movie at this point. But let's be real, they're not all good. The books are great, the comics are amazing, but some of the movies are very lackluster. But coming across a story that's actually written by Peter Atkins himself, a man who I couldn't really find much history about his comic endeavors, I thought was incredibly interesting, and I think it's a story that you all will enjoy for yourselves. And with my last story about the origins of Face the Cenobite, I've seen a big uptick in views as well as subscribers, so any newcomers and people who have been here for a long time just kind of supporting me, I appreciate you all. I don't usually do 2 Hellraiser videos in a row, but this one is for you. So, I'm gonna need you to do what we always do. I'm gonna need you to turn down the lights. I'm gonna need you to go and get yourself a snack. Anything to abide your time and to make sure that you don't have to get up and get away from this story. And what this story is called is A Song of Metal and Flesh. And while some may call it cliche, the story will begin at the end, as the man begins to explain his uprising through his musical career and through all these different people who would slowly bring him to the notes that he knows is hiding behind the veil. Beauty comes in at the eye. That's what they tell you. But that really undersells the world's generosity, don't you think? Dwell for a moment on the smell of a beautiful woman and concentrate on the feel of the rose petal. Think on the taste of the lover's tongue. And most of all, listen. Listen as the world begins to sing to you. Enjoy. I know I used to. But for me now, it's different. For me now, it's true. Beauty comes in at the eye. And as we cut away from this first strange shot, there is one thing to be noticed through all these different panels of this up close and personal eye. As we look into the blackness, as this man continues to look off into the nightmarish void, there is a landscape of horrors to be held. And it's something that confused me a little bit, but I think it's only something that would eventually lead to our ending. A foreshadowing and a telling of what is to come next. And with the next couple of panels, we will cut away to 30 years ago, as this man Jason sits in a doctor's office with his mother, as his practitioner begins to explain that he'll be totally blind for the rest of his life. And while his mother is completely distressed about this, and this doctor would have other agendas, this is basically the first time that this young man would experience all these other different emotions, all these darker feelings of secret agendas and plotting, and feelings where they shouldn't be, as it becomes very apparent that this doctor is trying to hit on his mother, while also telling her some very devastating news. And as we go through these panels, there's one more thing to be noticed, as this young man begins to notice a breeze rushing through the windows, through spaces where the wind from outside should not be allowed to pass. And for me, I think this is the first instinct of something behind the veil just trying to kind of push this obsession on this young man, something that would drive him throughout the rest of his musical career, and once again a foreshadowing for what is to come next. That he can hear the rustle of their underwear as they begin to talk, and he can also feel feel the blushing of this man's cheeks as he continues to try and seduce his mother in the worst of times. And as this doctor continues to go on to comfort this young man's mother, she begins to explain that she just feels so hurt that this boy will miss out on so much, and that he's already missing out on so much. And he begins to think to himself that what is he really missing other than a few illustrations and things that he's already experienced. After all, he still has touch, taste, smell, and sound, something that would guide him through the rest of his life. And through the next couple of panels, we'll begin to see a bit of a montage of this young boy growing up and trying to grasp at these musical notes until the future where he would never be accepted into an academy. Music! I could hear music, I could feel music, and I could almost smell it. It displaces the air, and it changes reality. It's solid, and it takes up space, and I needed to touch it, to make it, and to find it. They called me a prodigy, and they called me inventive, but I wasn't inventing. I was merely uncovering. I was capturing for the deprived world the hidden melodies it was too deaf to hear for itself. And the more I knew was still hidden, the more I sensed a vast sonic truth waiting to be unveiled. And as we're cutting away, we are looking at a grown Jason sitting at a piano at his new academy where his teacher would begin to try and explain just exactly why he deserves a spot here. And as he continues to go on and glow about his new student, Jason realizes that he doesn't really need any of these trivialities, that the only thing that really concerns him as he's plucking and playing away at these piano strings are the dying notes of sound surrounding his entire body, and more importantly, what is on the other side. And for him, these are things that come easily, and for most people, they would feel like you would have to make the music out of nothing, but for him, it all comes naturally. He can see it. He can see it in his mind's eye, and he can feel it, and he only needs to snatch this. And while this will be something that will be explained later on, as well as a foreboding of absolute tragedy, we cut to the next panel where we see this young man's very first lover, a red-headed woman, Deborah, who would eventually go on to show him the true reality of pleasure and pain, something that, like I said in the very beginning, absolutely screams Hellraiser. And I gotta say with this comic, it is one of the most just out in the open with what it's trying to depict. It's something that I feel really ties in the first movie with this woman just kind of sleeping with these different men and then proceeding to kill them at the end, and it's something that I hate to say over and over, but just absolutely and literally and unmetaphorically screams pain and pleasure. The academy was good for me at first. Not just music, but friends, and more than friends. There was Deborah. It's safe. Be with me, Jason. She sounded sweeter than running water through reeds, and she smelled more beautiful than meadows after spring rain, and the taste of her shamed honey. Touching her was like pressing your hands to the beaches of heaven, and the sounds of her pleasure were the nearest song could come to those hidden melodies, those mysterious harmonies that I knew circled somewhere between our world and the next. And with this night of new experiences and new melodies found, we would see Jason and Deborah laying naked upon their bed, as we can clearly see Deborah looking over to a portrait on her desk of a man named Steven, and a man who eventually would go on to try and snuff out Jason's musical career. But as we'll see by the end of the story, it only leads up to more of these hidden notes, the things that would eventually come to be bestowed upon an entire opera house, in a scene that I've never really quite seen before in the Hellraiser franchise. But more importantly, when this man Steven is introduced, it will be the first sense of rivalry for Jason. And the interesting thing about this is that Jason perfectly plays into this, and more rather welcomes it into his life. And for some reason, for whatever's going on in this man's head, all these different opportunities of lust and jealousy all play into the perfect song, things that would come to inspire this young gentleman. And it's something that we will continue to see more and more throughout this story. Stephen Middleton was the best the Academy had, apart from me. His envious hatred swam the air around him each time we spoke, despite his friendly words. You really are something special, Jason. Something quite different from the rest of us. That's nonsense. You're plenty good. It's true. I am. Bloody good. But you're different. You make it all seem natural and easy. It is easy. That's the point. It's not about work. It's just let me show you. You think of it as something you have to make out of nothing. No, it's all there. Just let it all out and then catch what you want. Listen and snatch. They thought they had a little secret, but I knew. I could hear them, and I could smell their cruel excitement. Fascinating. I think I'm beginning to understand. But I played along, and so did she. And with this next set of panels, this is where things are really going to take a twist, where we'll truly be able to see the mixture of pain and pleasure in a very physical sense, and something that might be a little uncomfortable for a lot of people, or maybe not. Maybe you're totally used to these stories at this point, but I know for me, it definitely landed a bit of shock when I first read this. But like I continue to say, and will probably say again throughout this video, and it's something that absolutely screams Hellraiser. The true embodiment of what I believe Clive Barker meant for these stories, and as well as Peter Atkins and all the different movies that he's made for the franchise. And just something that I've never quite seen, so unmetaphorical, so unsymbolic, and it's something that I absolutely loved about this story. But as we cut to the next panel, once again, we will see Jason and Deborah making love in their new bed, as they begin to introduce a new form of play. And while all this is going on, we would see Steven making his move to end this man's musical career, to do something that would truly stunt him for the rest of his life, but unfortunately for Steven, something that would only lead up to his very own demise. I want to see. I want the light on. I want to play. Let's play something. We played while the real game went on elsewhere. While we were at her place, Steven was at mine. She must have given him the key. It excites you, doesn't it? It makes you hard. You love it. The song was better than ever. She'd given me more clues to the hidden sonatas. This mix of pain and pleasure and the secret agendas was the closest I've ever gotten. It was dawn when I got home, and I should have known. Should have smelled that guilty cocktail of sweat and rust. Should have felt how the piano's discomfort prefigured my pain. But Deborah left me exhausted and inspired. A dangerous combination. And as we're watching Jason get home and beginning to play these newfound notes on his piano, he completely misses a new feel, a new touch upon all the different keys, and when he goes to slide his fingers across it to catch all these notes in midair, something terrible happens, and something that I found extremely grisly, and something that really made me cringe, as when we look upon this piano, we would see tiny razor blades laced in between each and every one of these key notes. And while this isn't necessarily one of the more gory parts of any Hellraiser comic that I've witnessed, it's something that definitely catches the eye, as we're very visually watching his hands be completely torn to pieces. And even though he's screaming out in pain, with the next couple of panels we would see this man landed in a hospital bed, as all these different people would come to visit him, Deborah included, and this would only continue to feed in this weird sense of emotion that this man Jason has been looking for the entire time. As he continues to bathe in these secret agendas, lavishing in the knowledgeable misdoings by Deborah, who very soon would get her very own comeuppance. Nothing was proved, and I didn't want it to be. They give me a lot to think about, and I was very grateful. Deborah even visited, and that was especially good. The counterpoint between her mouth's platitudes and her body's excitement was magnificent, like putting an A natural in a D sharp minor, like biting into a strawberry and finding an angry wasp. I could smell it, and I could taste it. My body bathed in the sweet satisfaction that my maiming brought her, and our worlds began to diverge. Steven got the glamour, the tours, and the recordings, and he betrayed Deborah in every town that he performed in, and I especially like that. Deborah got cancer and died. I visited, and she smelled fabulous. Fear and pain fought for dominance and harmonies of her anguish. And through all this pain and suffering that's happened through the story, the one thing that really caught my attention was how Deborah just mysteriously catches cancer and dies, and this man, kind of enjoying her state of kind of withering and perishing out of her own life, managed to be something that just came out of nowhere, alright? There's absolutely no explanation for why this has happened to her. I don't know if this is some kind of supernatural ability that maybe Jason's music has bestowed on her, but from here on out, we will only see this man become more and more powerful, as all these different events would eventually give him exactly everything that he needs. All the notes to eventually unlock the sightings of two Cenobites that I've never seen before, but managed to be a very interesting art style. And only yet another Cenobite that I'll be adding to the list of people that I would like to see come back into these tales. But from here on out, Jason would spend most of his time alone, sitting in his office, admiring all this new free-found time, as he begins to write symphonies for other orchestras, kind of commending that he doesn't really mind that Steven went on to be the famous person that he is now. And all this alone time to kind of relish over all these different events, all these different tragedies, would finally lead him to the place that he's always wanted to be. I got what I needed. Space and time to research and compose. I had to pursue the insights I've been given. I worked long hours, but not lonely ones. I had my books in Braille, my books on tape, and I had centuries of hidden knowledge to keep me company. Let us recompose the dissonant scale, and we will gain power in the world of the spirits. He was right. Music was a puzzle puzzle, a vast incomprehensible mystery, which allowed initiates at best a glimpse of the magic world they hinted at. There were new scales to discover, new conjunctions and notes to reveal, melodies of universal malice and symphonies of suffering. Every time we found something consonant and sweet, and thought we glimpsed the face of God, we've been sidetracked and fooled into easy solutions. There was a bigger music, a darker song of terrible beauty. And I would open the ears to the world of the screams of the mountains in torment, to the death cries of the dragon of the eternal, and the moans of the universe as the wounds split open and began to bled space and ooze planets. I knew the puzzle was solvable. I knew I would find the cluster of notes that would open the door to the occult. I had hell. Spirit guides would come to me from the world of dreams. Blue angels singing the songs of metal and flesh, wordless and sublime. And I knew the score was within me. I just had to let it out. And with the next couple of panels, this is exactly what Jason would go on to do, to actually take a bit of a leap of faith in what we might call the wrong direction, for him, the completely right one. As we begin to see this man utterly naked in the middle of this room, surrounded by all this empty sheet music. And while this does look quite demonic, the events that would precede this would only add to that, as we look behind him and see a door completely covered in nails. And as Jason continues to ponder these very last notes that would finally unlock the gates of hell, or whatever he perceives these notes to be, he would come to figure out that to unlock the puzzle, he would have to unlock himself in a very physical manner. As with the next couple of shots, we would see this man lay his entire body over this bed of nails, gashing and gnawing all these different holes throughout his entire body, and with this, spinning not unlike a ballerina in the center of all these empty sheet music and flinging blood across all these different scales. And soon after, literally connecting the dots of all these different blood splatters. And one of the most creative and cool configurations that I've ever seen throughout all these comics that I've read. And I've read a lot. And for me, a person who does play guitar and does kind of fiddle around with messing with music on a computer, maybe I'm a little biased, but this is by far my favorite configuration that I've yet to come across. And what exactly happens when this thing is open is an absolute reign of chaos and something that I've never quite seen before in the Hellraiser franchise. It's something that kind of contradicts itself in a few different stories, as in the Hellraiser Holiday Special, the man who was trying to sell these counterfeit boxes to children, or rather across the entire planet, was eventually made known that the Cenobites don't actually want these large clusters of people, that they actually want order and chaos, and that surely if they took over an entire planet at once, that this would be an absolute catastrophe, and completely against the code of Leviathan and the thing that they've been working for this entire time. But for here, things would get a little bit more different, and something that I've said through a great many of different videos, a symphony of pain. This would truly be made real. A decade of research and composition had swelled my reputation, if not my bank account. And I knew I could get it performed, and I knew who I wanted to perform it. The audience was full of the informed and the fashionable, people that I knew in one way or another. And eventually they would appreciate what they were being offered tonight. I was very excited. The world was to have its blinkers removed and its earplugs taken out. Tonight, the veil between life and the real was to be shredded. The piece hadn't been pre-rehearsed. I had them prepare with what I called related pieces, and I fed the media with some conceptual bullshit, lapping it up at my artistic vision. Now, it would begin. Crisp attack, good tone. My, he was playing well. The audience's enthusiasm could only be just restrained, and the orchestra played like a man possessed. Everything was perfect. Everything was pure, and everything had passion, and everything was calm. Then, everything went away. And I'm alive, I think. I can see, but I'm paralyzed. And I'm bereft of taste, touch, and smell. And I'm deaf. I'm here for eternity now. And all I can do is watch as beauty comes in at the eye. And with the ending of this incredibly creative story, this would be the end. And I gotta say, the ending where we actually get a shot of the world down below, with this new image of Leviathan spinning over top, and all these different people playing Jason like a literal xylophone, literally using his tendons and his ribcage as guitar strings, it manages to be one of the more disturbing artworks that I've seen throughout these books. Usually they have a bunch of different pieces throughout the individual stories, and this one really took the cake. And something truly demonic, or something just perfectly in line with the Cenobites, and it's something that I'd really like to see, and I cannot say this enough, and hopefully this is what HBO will be giving us with their new TV series based upon all these different Hellraiser Cenobites, at least from what I've read so far, is that we need a show of at least a bunch of these different Hellraiser stories. There's about 20 of these books, and they're all perfectly primed to be having 15 to an hour long if you really want to flesh these things out. But overall, Metal and Flesh manages to be definitely one of my more favorite stories, a shorter one, but one that I found to be extremely interesting, and one that managed to kind of captivate me very much so. It was a little better than kind of coming across one of these black and gold boxes that we see from time to time, and it's really these little instances in the Hellraiser franchise where we get to see these ancient book of riddles, or the unfound nursery rhymes, or even in a future video that I will be doing, a system of tunnels where if you take the correct amount of lefts and rights, somehow this would also unlock the Cenobites. But with the way that Jason's story finally comes to an end, and with this man kind of knowing exactly what's going to happen throughout the entire thing, and really welcoming this, like I keep saying through this entire video, and I'm only going to say it one more time, this story absolutely nails what Hellraiser is all about pain and pleasure, and about all these uncomfortable feelings that would eventually come to you through all these terrible situations of people plotting behind your back, sleeping with your girlfriend, literally putting razor blades in a piano that you're going to play, tearing apart your hands. And I think it just managed to be one of the better characters that I've really come across through all these different comic books. So everybody, let me know what you think down in the comments, and I thank you all so much for watching. Any newcomers, please go check out some other videos if you do enjoy my Hellraiser stuff. I cover a wide variety of spooky things, and once in a while, I go a little wholesome, alright? It's either a bloodbath, or it's a nice story about a man who was inspired by Batman, alright? We cover a wide range of topics here. But anyways, everybody, this might be the last video until Halloween comes around. I'll be planning on doing some Let's Talk videos in between, but I need to sit and read a very mysterious story that I really want to cover on this channel, because I know it's going to be amazing, and I know it's absolutely perfect for the Halloween season, and I'll just give you a hint, alright? It's not Hellraiser, but it is by Clive Barker. And it's a story that I really don't think a lot of people know about, but if it so happens that I'm not able to do it, as it is a more wordy one, it's something with a lot of descriptive writing rather than like interpersonal dialogue. So if there's, for some reason that doesn't come out, I'll eventually get to it, but I'm just a dude, alright? And sometimes the words don't come to me, alright? I recorded this video alone 3 separate times, and for the first 2, I was totally unhappy with it. I felt like I struggled my ass through it, but this final time, you know, it's a Monday night. I got the spooky lights, kind of chilly outside, and I was like, I'm gonna nail it this time. And hopefully I did that. But anyways, everybody, I appreciate you all so much. Go talk to me down in the comments. Go check out some other videos and things like that. Look forward to some Let's Talk videos. They might be a little more boring than my traditional thing, but just a little more bonus content for you. And I will see you all on the next episode of From the Heart with more Symphonies of Bane, or whatever we happen to come across. Have yourself a fantastic night, and I will see you on the next one.